What is up? What is up, YouTube? Hold on. Wait a minute. Let me turn on the camera. Go off every 30 seconds. Well, the monitor, the screen goes off. But check this out, man. Hey, 50 Cent lawyer reacts to P. Diddy sex trafficking trial. 50 Cent lawyer? Yeah, I know 50 been trolling and saying Diddy did it. Diddy did it. You know, trying to make something out of that. 50 cool, man. I gotta give it to him, man. I think 50 played the game, and he played the game more fair than anybody else did. Shout out to Eminem, Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre cool, man. He walked away from Suge Knight. You can have all the publishing and all that. I just want my dignity. I want my, respect. Respect go out to Dr. Dre. He knew that he was the future. He knew he was the shit. So Dr. Dre walked away and took Eminem with him, who was the beast, the most #1 talked about rapper in the world. You think about that. I don't care if you don't like him. I don't care if he white, black, Chinese, or whatever. And then come Harry Mack. I'm a Harry Mack fan. I like Harry Mack freestyling. Anyway, check this out, man. 50 Cent lawyer reacts to the P. Diddy joint. So, y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, man. Give him a thumbs up. Hey, let's check this out. Oh, I've been asking people, the Music Recording Network. The Music Recording Network stream. We got another channel, the Music Recording Network stream. But do me a favor, do Uncle Mike a favor now. You go to Google and YouTube search for the Music Recording Network stream, the space music space recording space network space stream, and see if the stream channel come up. After that, use the @ and put it all together, at the Music Recording Network stream, all one word, and see if it come up then. For some reason, YouTube is kind of love YouTube. I can't talk bad about YouTube, but for some reason, man, YouTube is not showing our other channel, man. We gotta really search for it. But if you use the @ and if I get a lot of people to search it in the YouTube, so get Uncle Mike, do Uncle Mike a favor, search it. And I think the more people who search it for us, the more it comes up in the search engines and say, we gotta wake it up. We gotta wake it up, baby. Gotta wake it up in the search engine. That's what we gotta do. So if y'all want to help and y'all don't have no money to like donate to the channel, whatever, just go to Google, go to your favorite search engine, and use the @ at the Music Recording Network stream. You'll see the world written in yellow is stream written in yellow. So do me a favor. Anyway, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell here too. Go over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell over there, and let's check this bad boy.
P. Diddy was before.
Oh, while you're at the stream channel, check out some of those videos. Let's go.
Before P. Diddy was an alleged sex trafficker, he was a Grammy award-winning artist who, for a time, was beloved. So what's it like for a celebrity like that to be in court? And what's ahead for his federal trial? We're sitting down with 50 Cent's attorney for his take on the case. This is Scandal, presented by Law and Crime. I'm 𝗟𝗜𝗡𝗞𝗦.
Sucky now.
Okay, you guys, let's face
sucky.
it. We're all enamored with this P. Diddy trial for the same reason as we were addicted to the Johnny Depp live stream. We want to look inside the lives of the rich, famous, and powerful. And how better to do that than by talking to an expert? That's Imran Ansari, former Law and Crime host, who, by the way, thank you to Imran, threw a party after that Johnny Depp trial that we all were so focused on. Actually, Imran's party is the first time I met any of my Law and Crime coworkers in real life. So that really is a touchstone in my life. So thank you to Imran for that. But he's probably more known for a couple of other things, being a famous criminal defense attorney. He's known for a few different cases, but there's a specific one he's known for, 50 Cent. Yeah, repping 50 Cent. He's got some background with a couple of other famous clients too, and I felt like he was the perfect person to talk about Diddy with. Which, speaking of which, What is Diddy up against? Well, here's a quick little reminder before we dive into all of our questions with Imran. P. Diddy has been charged with multiple federal sex crimes, including racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. This comes after a slew of civil lawsuits were filed against P. Diddy, kind of alleging the same sexual misconduct, a pattern of allegations, if you will. However, I do want to note P. Diddy has not been convicted of these crimes. He's pleaded not guilty, in fact, and opening statements are set to begin on May 12th, which is why we're here today, why we're doing a P. Diddy episode, why we're previewing it all with Imran. Okay, so P. Diddy has denied all of these allegations, as I said, but here's what the government says happened, that P. Diddy was allegedly the ringleader in this sex trafficking ring that went back for years. They also allege a pattern of abuse with multiple different victims, and we could potentially see multiple different victims testify for the government for the prosecution. Now, he was indicted on these federal sex crimes back in September of 2024, and I want to read straight from the indictment so I can paint a picture of what they're alleging. Quote, Combs and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise wielded the power and prestige of Combs's role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs's orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers that Combs referred to as, among other things, freak-offs. Freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and internationally. Freak-offs occurred regularly, sometimes lasted multiple days, and often involved multiple commercial sex workers. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of controlled substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes, unbeknownst to the victims, Combs kept videos he filmed of victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. After freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. Now, I know that's a really long excerpt I read, but I really like that one because it really shows what the prosecution's case is. It all hinders on these freak-offs. The allegation that Diddy or members of his team would, again, allegedly, because he has not been convicted, allegedly drug these people, force them to have sex with prostitutes, allegedly, record this, allegedly. And then there's the threats of alleged violence or threatening them to release these videos. Hey, if you talk, I'm going to release this really embarrassing video of you. You better stay quiet. But now there's also the allegations that the feds got their hands on these recordings and are using them against P. Diddy. We'll wait and see at trial. But I thought that was a pretty good description of the allegations that the feds are bringing forward. Now, their indictment came after civil allegations, multiple of them, namely Cassandra Ventura, who was Diddy's girlfriend for a time. She's the first one to file suit against him in a major way, and she's also expected to be victim one testifying in the federal trial against him. Now, in her lawsuit, she alleged an abusive relationship with Diddy. I mean, I'm talking emotionally, physically, sexually, a lot of allegations, and she also described freak-offs too. So this is kind of what we can expect from the prosecution. We're talking about Cassie and the freak-offs, other victims and witnesses talking about all of these allegations. That's the prosecution side of things. But what about the defense? What about what's going on in Diddy's mind? And that's where we've got to turn to a defense attorney. And now I'll cue our interview. All right, today's guest really needs no introduction, but I'm going to just in case. He's a friend of Law and Crime, a former host for us too, and defense attorney Imran Ansari, who has repped people like 50 Cent. Imran, you're making your Scandal debut with us today. Thank you so much for making time for us and coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I want to pick your brain because you have repped people who are kind of high profile, different than the ordinary peasants like myself. And I'm wondering, what's it like prepping for a client like that who is known, recognizable by their face, their name, and their contribution to the entertainment world?
Yeah, sure. So when you have a client who is a public figure, say someone in an entertainment industry or who is an athlete, and now they find themselves in trouble with the law, perhaps they're indicted or there's some civil lawsuits alleging sexual harassment or things like that against them. now you're not just dealing with the court of law, but you're also dealing with the court of public opinion. So not only do you prep your client and the case with the, defending the case in court, but you're constantly also in consideration of how the public is perceiving your client and the allegations against him or her, and what the press is focusing on. So you have the court of law, of course, and that is primarily the focus when you're defending someone who is a public figure or just, Joe Schmo down the block. But with a public figure who is now facing, say, a criminal trial like Diddy, you're also very cognizant of the court of public opinion, because that's going to seep in to the jury, and it's going to have a lot of, considerations and impact on how you're going to try the case.
That's such a great response, talking about the reputational side of things and the court of public opinion, because as we know, P. Diddy has not been convicted of a crime. So he is innocent until proven guilty. But sometimes it does seem as though in the court of public opinion, he's already been convicted of these crimes. But let's say Diddy's acquitted on all of them way down the line. I mean, what does it mean for his reputation, the fact that some people have slandered or defamed him in a way ahead of that?
So if he has an acquittal, that's going to be a massive win for him. It's going to be vindication, again, in the court of law, but also in the court of public opinion. And he's really suffered a tremendous blow to his reputation. Of course, he is sitting in MDC, the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, incarcerated. And I can tell you from being inside there as an attorney visiting clients, it's not a fun place to be. It's considered a pretty rough prison in terms of, prison reputation in the country. And he's sitting there when he had lived a life of luxury, a life of fame, and to now be in that situation where you've had a fall from, up here and now you're down here in both reputation and also in a legal situation. If he is miraculously acquitted, and I say miraculously because, of course, he is innocent until proven guilty, but we are having a pile-on here, and it's a tough case. That's my opinion. It's a tough case when you have all these accusations to deal with from a defense side. But if he is acquitted, then he's going to have to really try to repair his reputation and try to build back what he once had.
It does seem like this is going to be a tough case from both sides, and I want to get to that in a minute. But you talked about MDC, which I want to bring up too, because as we know, Diddy was not granted house arrest or bail or bond. He's still been at MDC, which, as you said, and we've reported here on this very show, that it isn't the nicest place for somebody to have to stay. And I'm wondering if that makes things more complicated too in preparing for his defense. I mean, the fact that he doesn't just have his cell phone with him and he can text his attorneys for a question. Like, they have to go there to MDC. I mean, they could call him on the phone, but when they wanted to meet with him, they're not meeting at his penthouse or his mansion. They're going to this jail. I mean, does that make things more tricky for the preparation?
Whenever you're defending an individual who's incarcerated, preparing for trial is all the more difficult. Like he says here, you can't just call them up. You can't invite them to your office. You can't spread out all the paperwork and documents and discovery and parse through it with them easily like that. You're really confined, literally and also figuratively, by the parameters of the prison. There's visitation hours. And for example, we're representing Harvey Weinstein right now, and he's being retried. And just last night, I was in the prison ward of Bellevue Hospital visiting my client. But when 8 p.m. came around, the corrections officer was knocking on the window saying it's time to go. Yet we had a lot more to discuss because we're in the middle of trial. So whenever you have an individual who you're representing who is incarcerated, preparation for trial, and even just, you have a thought late at night while you're in the middle of trial, you can't just call them up and say, listen, tomorrow we got to tackle this. We got to think about that. You got to wait until the next day to see them. And the logistics of prison, whether it's a state facility or like MDC, a federal detention center, you're really, you have to go by the rules of corrections. You got to play by the rules of corrections. And you're relegated by the rules of corrections, meaning visitation hours and things that you can show your client or bring with you and things like that. So it is all the more difficult preparing for trial when you have an incarcerated client.
Speaking of Diddy's life in MDC, since he's been there, we've seen a couple of reports all over about different things. For instance, he allegedly had a breakdown around the holidays. There were other reports that he was maybe paranoid about the food, that someone was going to poison him. I mean, maybe having some mental issues at a time because he also was on suicide watch when he first arrived. So all of those things, the personal things going on with Diddy, I know that as a defense attorney, you have to prepare for the legal side of things too, but is it possible that he's confiding with his defense attorneys and saying, here's what's going on with me personally? I mean, what do you think is going on in Diddy's head?
Of course, because when you have a client like Diddy, someone who is renowned, who was used to living really luxuriously, really having everyone doing things at their beck and call, and they find themselves rather quickly with that all gone. And now they're sitting in prison, a really harsh prison. And everything that they knew for the last few decades is gone. Their reputation, their wealth, living a luxurious lifestyle is going to have a real negative impact on their psyche. And I've seen it time and time again with some of the famous people that we have represented who really were, living a lavish lifestyle. And now they find themselves totally fallen from grace. And they are dealing with not just the legal realities of what they have to deal with in court, but really a psychological hurdle for them that they have to overcome each day when they're working with their attorneys and really facing the charges that the prosecution has brought against them. So it doesn't surprise me that Diddy had a breakdown like that because really it's such a dramatic change of lifestyle for him that would cause someone to have stress. Now, even a regular individual who's living, just a reasonable or regular lifestyle finds themselves in prison, they're going to have a tough time and perhaps have a breakdown. But when you have someone who has had a polar opposite in terms of lifestyle and what they were used to, it's going to have a real impact on them. And you have to parse through that with your client as the attorney. And I can speak, personally, someone like, Diddy, who's going through such a dramatic change, you as an attorney, you're not only giving them legal counsel, but you almost become someone to talk to and work through the personal issues and trauma that they're dealing with by having to find themselves in prison and dealing with serious charges.
I can only imagine the identity crisis that P. Diddy is having right now, because before this, he's a 3-time Grammy Award winner. He was given the key to New York City a year before he was arrested in the same city. I mean, a fall from grace, I know we keep saying it, but there's got to be a lot going on in this guy's head. And I wanted to talk to you about the trial now that we're kind of on the eve of all of it. From the time that he was arrested and indicted back in September until now, when opening statements are set for next week, it's been less than a year. What do you think about that time frame? I know that neither side is going to mess around. The feds, the federal prosecutors, they're going to have their things together, their stuff together. But so is the defense team. I mean, Diddy's got a pretty good defense team. Do you think both sides are ready?
When you're a trial attorney, whether you're a prosecutor or a defense attorney, you have to be ready for a trial date. Now, the defense tried to get an extension of the trial date because the prosecution added more charges to Diddy or regarding Diddy not too long ago, but the judge denied that request. And that's why they're in jury selection. And as you mentioned here, they're going to be going to opening statements pretty shortly, probably next week. So you have to be ready for trial. You have to have a eye on the evidence and preparation ongoing from indictment to that trial date. And it's in federal court. Federal court usually moves quicker than state court. So we saw this case from indictment to trial date in a pretty quick fashion. But you got to be ready from the prosecution standpoint, but also the defense standpoint. And I would imagine that the defense team have been focused on this case considerably since being retained on it. They knew the trial date is coming. Their request for an extension was not granted. So I would imagine they're coming into this ready. Same with the prosecution. And it's going to be a trial that all eyes are on. And I think it's going to go relatively quickly from the standpoint of the evidence being presented. It's going to be a few weeks. But usually, before you know it, we're going to be at the point where the jury's deliberating and it's going to be in their hands.
So, as someone who has prepared for trial and actually gone to trial, because you've been in the preparation side of things and in courtroom where I haven't, so I want to hear your side of things. I know that you talked about the timeline there, that they've got to be ready, and it seems like they probably are at this point. But what are the logistics of preparing for it? I know that they would want to see Diddy as much as they can to talk to him, get his input, because that's so vital in all of this. But what are the logistics of planning through all of this, going through the witnesses, the evidence, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I'm going to go from a defense standpoint. So they would be obviously looking at the indictment. And then there's been discovery in these months from the indictment leading up to trial where they're getting discovery from the government and also certain information about the witnesses that the government is going to be calling. But they're also going to be doing their own preparation for a possible defense case. And that is lining up potential expert witnesses, lining up witnesses who are going to be testifying for the defense, analyzing the evidence and the discovery from the government, and also considering each of the government's witnesses, doing the background on them, and preparing, potential cross-examination, for those witnesses, and then considering the charges that Diddy is facing, the racketeering charges, the trafficking charges, and how to best attack that in the court of law from a defense standpoint, hold the government to their burden, and consider what, if any, defense case you're going to be putting on.
I wonder about the cross-exam from the defense, because in many of my episodes I've talked about on Scandal is that the prosecution is bringing forward survivors to testify, namely Cassie, Cassandra Ventura. We know that she'll be testifying under her own name. So cross-exam from the defense has got to be intense, I'm anticipating. Do you think they're spending a lot of time focused on that too?
Certainly. And when you have a case like this where you're going to have individuals coming in and making claims against the defendant, Diddy, of a sexual nature, sensitive topics. They're going to be coming in and likely they will be emotional on the stand and making real accusations against Diddy. From a defense standpoint, you're going to have to make a consideration about the tone and tenor of your cross-examination. You don't want to necessarily come in too hot, because that may irk the jury. The jury may get turned off by that, especially when dealing with sensitive topics. However, you also don't want to discount any zealous advocacy for your client. And if it calls for aggressive or vigorous cross-examination of a certain witness, then you're going to want to do that, especially with a case like this, where you have a high-profile defendant and you have multiple people coming in and making similar accusations against that individual. I call it the pile-on. It's the prosecution are putting on their evidence, but from a defense standpoint, it does feel like a pile-on, and you have to parse through all those allegations and testimony and best attack it in cross-examination in a very strategic manner. And you have to always consider the witness on the stand and how the jury will perceive your cross-examination of that witness.
Speaking of testimony, what about P. Diddy taking the stand? I know it's up to the defendant whether he will actually take the stand. And this is a question I ask a lot of people, but I think you'd be a good one for this. What would that look like, the discussions, Diddy deciding whether he would actually testify? And if so, what would the preparation be?
So it is the defendant's choice in a criminal case if they want to take the stand and testify themselves. Of course, there's no burden on the defense, and the defendant can sit back and let the prosecution put on their case and not testify. It's their choice. However, it's your job as a defense attorney to counsel the defendant as to the pros and cons of testifying. Now, with Diddy, like I mentioned, it could be a real pile-on here of accusations against him. And if it may be a defense strategy where the prosecution's case at the end of the day may not rise to beyond a reasonable doubt, then you may want to hold him back, and you don't want to put him on the stand and open him up to rigorous cross-examination, which could be a potential disaster. But, again, you're going to analyze the testimony, the evidence of the trial each day, day by day. So if you have a client who's already expressing some interest that they want to testify on their own behalf, you have to take their desires and their wishes into consideration, but counsel them as to the best choice given the evidence that's coming in at trial. So it's a day-by-day analysis with the evidence and testimony, And when it comes to game time on defense case and whether he's going to make that choice to testify, certainly his team, Mark Agnifilo and Kenny Garagos, and what they're going to be sitting with him and really, really counseling him as to the pros and cons of taking the stand, because it could be beneficial, but in a case like this, it could be a disaster.
You talked about Diddy's defense team, Mark Agnifilo. There are a lot of really big names, renowned defense attorneys, and then you've got the federal prosecutors. So these are the big guns on both sides of things. But you have talked a lot about the pile-on here, so-called, the fact that the prosecution has a lot against Diddy. I know he's going to put up a fight, but what are your thoughts? Who do you think is going to come out on top?
Well, we have to see, right? You got to see what the prosecution's going to do on their case. Right now, it seems like they have a robust case, but then again, the charges themselves, such as racketeering, sex trafficking, sometimes those are hard to prove. You really have to connect the dots and make out the elements of the crime. Were these just parties that people were willfully going to, or was it something more nefarious, as they allege against Diddy, and something criminal? So the prosecution is really going to have to bring that evidence in order to prove the elements of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. And then, of course, we are going to certainly expect a vigorous, aggressive defense from Diddy's defense team to poke holes into the prosecution's case when they can, and ultimately argue to the jury at the end of the day that this was not a criminal enterprise or conduct on Diddy's part, but rather something not nefarious. Parties, people were willfully there. I think that's the sort of defense we're going to get from the Diddy team. And ultimately, the jury is going to have to parse through that evidence and deliberate and render a verdict.
It'll be interesting to see. As you said before, all eyes across the world are going to be on this trial. So I guess we'll wait and see what happens. For today, Imran Ansari, thank you so much for coming on Scandal with us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's just so interesting to take a peek behind the curtain and see what the defense perhaps looks like, what they're talking about, how they're preparing, what's going on in Diddy's mind. And you and I both will see the execution of all of that soon enough when openings begin on May 12th. And I guess I say see, but unfortunately it's in federal court, so there will not be a live stream or video. We do have the next best thing though. My friend, law and crime reporter Elizabeth Milner, she's followed this case so amazingly. She's been in the courtroom giving us constant updates, and she'll be there next week too. She's already been at a bit of jury selection. So Elizabeth will be there every day to bring us the updates. We plan on getting our hands on the transcripts too, so I can tell you literally exactly what happened in court. I'm telling you, you guys are not going to want to miss all of these updates we're going to have for you multiple times a day. And there's no
Most
better
definitely.
way to not miss any of these updates than by subscribing to our Scandal channel. So make sure to do that right now. You can also send us any emails for future episode ideas, comments, tips, whatever they may be. Our email is scandal@lawandcrime.com. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Scandal. I'm your host, Qiara Gillespie, and I'll see you next time.
Wow, man. This is crazy. All it takes, y'all, is one person to come forward and say, Diddy drugged me, then he filmed me, then he got money out of me to keep my mouth shut because I didn't want to lose my family for 30 years. This has been going on for 30 years, right? So for 5 years, he done got money out of me because he had these tapes, and I paid him. Here's the receipts and everything. That's all it takes is one person to stand up and say that. Why are you saying it now? Well, I lost my family. My kids don't speak to me no more. I'm a drunk. Whatever the case may be, I ain't in the showbiz no more. I'm not a superstar no more. I used to be a superstar. There's a lot of them out there for 30 years. Now, I just want my peace. About to die. I'm an old man now. Me, Uncle Mike 59. I know the feeling, baby. I done lived my life, whatever. I done did everything but the truth. So now it's time for me to tell the truth. That's what it's going to be about. I got receipts and everything. Y'all know the tapes. Y'all got the tapes. Y'all got the exact same tapes that he been showing me for the last 5 years and getting money out of me. That's what's going to happen, man. All you need is one person. All you need is one person to do that. Look here, man. I'm going to get on up out of here. Y'all tell me what y'all think, man. I think it's a lot of stuff that's about to go down that we didn't even think about. like somebody admitting that, yeah, I was at the parties, and I woke up one day with all these men around me. I don't know what happened, but my behind was hurting. I'm like, what? I know good and well. And they told me to be quiet, and I started getting all these deals. Major deals. Yeah, that's crazy, man. Hey, y'all take it light. Take it slow. Tell them Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.